Hello, everyone. I'm meteorologist Charlie Neese yet again, coming to you from the weather farm, and we've got another tornado warning to talk about now. This is for Williamson County. The city of Franklin is just barely in this storm. This storm has had a history of producing very large hail, upwards of golf ball size, and it continues to move off toward the north and east, and it is going to roll through the Williamson County area. Sorry, I'm looking up some weather data as I speak, and and so this tornado warning that I'll show you here in just a second is for Williamson County. It is the worst is likely to pass south of Franklin. In the purple area, that is where you're seeing the large hail. The large hail right now is about to move into South Hall. It's near Carl Road and Carters Creek Pike. At least quarter-sized hail, but there have been reports of golf ball size hail with this. And I'm going to look at so this cell is likely to continue to strengthen, and we're going to be seeing there's a boundary that has set up. Basically, let me show you. Basically right in through here. And so that cell is just going to ride along that boundary. And so we've got cooler air that's ended up over Franklin, where it dropped from close to 80 to now it's about 65, as this boundary is just temporarily pushed to the south right through here. And with that cell is just going to ride along. It is attached to that boundary, is going to ride along the boundary where the rotation is the strongest. Now we're getting a little bit of hail contamination, but there's the rotation is going over Thompson Station right now. The hail is contaminating the signal, so it's hard to see some of what's really going on here, but it has a definite hook. You are in the hook in Thompson Station, and so here's a little factoid for you. Sometimes you'll hear people say it goes really still or really calm right before a tornado hits. And it actually does in the biggest of tornadoes, because you end up in this hook. So you get heavy rain and hail, then you get the hook, then the tornado would be coming in behind that. So the core of Thompson Station's right now at Country Haven Estates, Thompson Station Road in Columbia Pike, you are in the hook of this storm that's rotating. And the Weather Service is saying it has tornado potential. It definitely has had large hail. And so you are in the hook, you're in that calm in Thompson Station, and then when this backside pushes through, when this part of it pushes through right here, that's when you would see the tornado if there were one on the ground. So it's got that definite, it's a supercell thunderstorm. We've seen multiple supercells over the last 24 hours with this system. There's the hook. We've seen multiple hooks. We have not seen in Middle Tennessee significant tornado touchdowns over the last 12 hours or so with all these warnings. We have seen big tornadoes across West Tennessee, back into Arkansas, back into Illinois, and back into Missouri from this same system. So we're just going to have to continue to monitor and watch it. You're going to have to, every time a tornado warning is issued, you're just going to have to make sure that you treat it with a lot of respect. And we've got a very ugly, ragged-looking cloud moving through. When this thing moved through Spring Hill, it's going through the north side of Spring Hill now. They dropped, the temperatures are dropping significantly right as that boundary passes by. Again, I lost about 15 to 18 degrees in just a couple of minutes when the boundary that this is riding along pushed down to the south. It still has hail. The hail signature is decreasing, which could mean that the updraft is weakening a little bit. And if this storm crosses the boundary and ends up in the cool side, then we should see that this, hopefully the storm weakened, but it's still got this really strong hook. So Thompson Station, you're very close to where the tornado would be. It's also about to cross 840 and Columbia Pike, and it's also going to be very close to where 65 and 840 meet. Probably going to pass, well, it's going to pass very close to that if there were a tornado on the ground. Still getting a lot of reports of large hail with this system. There's this was, so we've got a lowered, what looks like a wall cloud off of when it went over Port Royal in Spring Hill. So again, as it's coming into Thompson Station, this probably looks really ugly. It's just an ugly cell as it's moving northeast. And so the tornado warning for Williamson County continues. There's the cell. Franklin, downtown Franklin, you're in moderate to heavy rain. The large hail is coming across where Henpeck comes into Lewisburg Pike, and that's going to move toward the east. It's going to cross over Ellington Park and then end up into the Interstate 65 area as it moves off toward the east. So at least quarter-sized hail falling in this area, maybe a little bit larger. The tornado itself, if it were on the ground, would be right along Interstate 840, crossing where 840 and Columbia Pike are very close to that intersection. Again, because there's so much hail in this storm, we're getting a little bit of contamination in the signal. Let me take a look at it from the Hopkinsville radar. Yeah. But it is rotating. There's the rotation over 65 and 840. It is probably crossed over or is crossing over now Columbia. So the tornado would be right in here if it were on the ground. Critz Lane and Lewisburg Pike. That's a big intersection there. Right before you go under Interstate 65. And there's 840 just to the north of it. So anywhere between where Macklemore Road comes into Lewisburg Pike and where Critz Lane comes into, right in that area. A lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about because of it's a popular area, but you can see this strongly hooked storm. Tornado warning continues, and Weather Service is getting a lot of pictures of dime to golf ball sized hail with this system, and also really low hanging clouds, possible wall clouds with this. And of course the wall cloud is where the tornado would form if it were going to form. This storm is just riding right along that boundary. Again, the good news is that where the hail core was, the hail core is shrinking. That indicates that maybe the updrafts with this cell is weakening a bit. So hopefully we're seeing a weakening trend with it, but it's still strongly hooked, so it's still strongly rotating. And the radar still shows, again, it's just kind of a messy look because of the hail contamination on the signature there. But this will be out of Franklin. Next stop will be Nolensville. The rotation next up would be after it crosses Interstate 65, headed toward Paytonsville Road, north of Paytonsville, headed toward Long Lane, headed toward Goosey Hill Road, Crowder Road, Arno Road. And again, there are lots of individual subdivisions down here that this is going to be passing across. So let's see what the Weather Service is saying here. Tornado warning remains in effect until 4:15. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Thompson Station, 7 miles south of Franklin. Tornado and 2-inch diameter hail potential. Radar has indicated the rotation. So that's still in effect. There's your rotation. There's your hook, where again, it's rotating down here like this. It's pulling in drier air from the east and south, and it creates that bend in the radar signature to create that hook. And as they used to say that, you know, a lot of times before tornadoes, you get this calm period, and it was usually after the hail had passed, and as the hook passed over, it would go calm, and then you would get the tornado behind it. There has been no report of a tornado with this cell. We've had reports of very low-hanging clouds, dark clouds, especially when it was passing over Spring Hill. So I'm looking at some pictures of it from the National Weather Service. And there's a definite, what looks to be a wall cloud, a lowering with it. There's a shelf cloud, but also looks like it also, it looks really nasty as it's coming into your area. Hail, greatest hail threat across Mudsink. This is Highway 96 on the east side of Franklin, near Arno Road and Highway 96. That's where it looks like one of the areas of hail, what's left over of the hail might be. It's probably about pea to marble size now. Not as big as it was. And then the rotation is down here. It's getting ready to cross. It's crossing 65 now. It's going to cross over Paytonsville Road, headed toward Gosey Hill Road, and Long Lane is where that cell is headed. Let me pull this out for you, put it into motion, and there's your cell. Franklin, you're on the northwest side. You're not going to be affected by the rotation with this storm. And again, fortunately, we haven't had reports of touchdowns, but you're still getting a lot of low-hanging, ugly-looking clouds with this. So moving off toward the northeast, moving toward Nolensville. It's going to move over Arrington, crossing Gosey Hill Road and Long Lane. It's going to cross Arno Road, and it's going to head toward Arrington if it continues on its current track. Let's see what the temperatures are doing. So we've got rain-cooled air here across Franklin and to the north, and that's going to lower the chance of severe weather for the short term. But the boundary is expected to lift back up. So later on this evening, we may actually see temperatures rise again. But there's a lot of warm, juicy air down here that's helping to feed these storms. So the other thing is we've got this cell that's the tornado-warned storm. Then we have a cell behind that moving into Hohenwald that's starting to take kind of that shape that these cells have been taking. And then there's another cell back toward Waynesboro, and it is warm down here. See if I can show you some of the temperatures here and the difference. So like in Lawrenceburg right now, it's close to 80 degrees, close to 80 outside of Columbia. And then you come up toward the Franklin area, it's 66 in Smyrna, it's 61 in Nashville. So again, we have this huge boundary that has set up pretty much right through this area. It's much cooler on the south side of it, or excuse me, on the north side of it. It is much warmer on the south side of it. So what's happening is we're getting a lot of warm, moist air that's feeding up into these storms to keep them going. And the storms themselves are just going to ride like a train track along that boundary. And they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Let's see here. Yeah, so in the area as it passed over near Lewisburg, near Berry Farms, and Goose Creek Bypass in that area, my sister says she could see rotating rotation in the clouds as it passed by, and the Weather Service is getting a lot of pictures of kind of low-hanging wall clouds, really ugly looking, nearly ground scraping clouds with this cell. And again, now it is out of Spring Hill. It is south of Franklin. Franklin, you are not in the danger zone from this storm as far as downtown Franklin. It's passing off toward, it's going to pass off toward this area, Nolensville, Arrington. Next up is Arrington. It's passing on the north side of Paytonsville, going to go toward Arrington, and we're going to get a lot more reports of just ugly looking low hanging clouds that at times probably show rotation. And it's just another in a series. Let's see. I'm just looking to see if I'm getting any reports of anything. So Arrington, you're next in line. There's your rotation. Velocity is still showing. I mean, again, this isn't exactly representative because of all the hail that's been with it, but because the hail core is shrunk, we're probably starting to see a little bit more in the way of actual velocity data. So there's the rotation going over Arrington, Hickory Hills and Arrington. It's crossing over Wilson Pike, and it's headed toward Lake Colonial Estates. It's near the intersection, it's near the intersection of Burke Hollow Road and Wilson Pike. And if you're in that area, Arrington, Ben Hill, Hickory Hills, anywhere there, it is going to be a very ugly looking storm. The tornado warning continues with it. Low hanging, we call it ground scraping wall clouds and scud. It's just ugly. But it is rotating still. Now again, the lightning continues to decrease with it. If we're seeing hail, it's right around Trinity, Wilson Pike, North Chapel Road, right in that area. That's likely where we're still seeing the potential for at least some small hail. But the updrafts, because the hail isn't as big, because the lightning isn't as intense, we're likely seeing this weaken a bit. Still rotating, still a tornado warning, still want to be in your safe place ahead of it. But the good news is hopefully it's weakening as it's moving toward the north and east. Again, next stop would be Arrington. It's crossing Arno Road. The rotation would be crossing Arno Road. I mean, if you're looking at this storm from Arno Road and Trinity Road right now, it's an ugly look. Or if you're on Highway 96 or Murfreesboro Road in Trinity, in that intersection, looking into this thing, it is ugly. I can just tell you. It's just low clouds, dark clouds, looks super mean. So the question is, we're not that far from the storm reaching the boundary of the tornado warning. So the question is, will they reissue the tornado warning as it moves toward, yep, there's my answer. So new tornado warning includes Nolensville, Smyrna, and Laverne. It looks to probably continue to take this northeast track. It's going to take it across Hickory Hills, very close to Nolensville, probably it's going to take it very close to Nolensville, and then up toward Rock Springs. Let me see what the Weather Service is saying on their issuing this. Lots of hail still being reported. I'm going to pull out. So this tornado warning, southeastern Davidson, northern Rutherford, I don't think it's going to affect. I think it's going to stay from Williamson into Rutherford County if it continues on its current track. They're still saying it's possible. Tornadoes possible. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado moving northeast at 45 miles an hour. And they're not mentioning the very large hail that it had earlier, and that kind of matches what we're seeing with this cell, that it doesn't have the large hail that it did earlier. So a little wider view. Franklin, you're on the very back edge of it, but Franklin and even Fairview, we've got more cells back towards Centerville. They're moving northeast right along that boundary. And you can see it again. It's 81 degrees in Lewisburg. And these are current readings. 81 in Murfreesboro, but in Smyrna, it's 66. And anytime you get these really strong boundaries like that, let me show you right through there. Anytime you get those really strong boundaries, those storms can focus on that boundary, and they'll just ride along the boundary like a train track, and they've got all this warm air coming up from the south feeding into these storms. So even though it's cooler on the north side of the boundary in the 60s, you really need the warm air on the south side to be pulling into those storms to keep them going. Now, if the storm, like this storm might, and here's something to look at. This is why this storm might be weakening. Because if it's 66 in Smyrna, if the boundary is running something like this, because again, 81 Murfreesboro, 66 in Smyrna, if that storm crosses the boundary and goes north of the boundary, it's going to lose some of that inflow of the really warm, unstable air, and it's going to gradually weaken, which is probably what we're seeing with this. So once the rotation center moves north of that boundary, that's when we probably start to see the weakening phase of the storm. But again, the rotation that's left is going to go over, or it's pretty much going to go over Nolensville. And still not seeing an increase in the hail. And overall, I mean, you can see how the storm is losing a lot of those bright yellows and bright reds, indicating it's just starting to shrink up as it's probably crossed the boundary, moving into the cooler air. If you keep the circulation right on the front where it can access the warm air, it'll keep going likely. But I think this one's crossed into the cool side of it, the cool side of that boundary. So I'm hoping that that's just going to kind of continue to weaken and hopefully fade away. Now, what we're going to have to watch are these cells back to the west. Are they going to cross on the north side of the boundary? And if so, that'll keep them at bay too. If they start to tap into the warm, moist air on the south side of the boundary where it's still close to 80, I mean, if you're in Nashville right now and it's 61 degrees, it is chilly. And but it's not like that across the entire area. I mean, just going south toward Columbia, it's still close to 80. And so we've got a huge temperature contrast across Middle Tennessee that can help fuel these storms to keep them going. Now you'll see back to the west, more storms, more waves of storms. So this is setting up a lot like last night. Hopefully we won't have as many tornado warnings as we did during the early morning hours, but we have multiple waves of storms. So we've got the one coming through Franklin east towards Smyrna now. We've got one coming through Centerville now. We've got one approaching Hohenwald now. We've got another one that's approaching Selmer, which was hit by a big tornado last evening. And we've got another one to the east of Memphis. So these multiple waves will continue to give us very heavy amounts of rainfall. Overnight tonight, the models have this gradually shifting north. So let's take a look at what the computer models are forecasting with this as we go through the rest of the night. And we'll take a look and just show you what the models are saying and just give you an idea of how long this is going to last, how long this is going to go on. So this is not the current radar. This is the computer model forecasting what's going to be happening with this. So as we go through time, I'll play this in through time, and you start to see this is at 10 o'clock. We're starting to get a little bit of a break potentially here in the Nashville area back to Fairview, and that what's expected is that boundary with that warm air is going to lift up to the north, and that's going to take the greatest threat for storms and training of storms to the north as that front or that boundary lifts north as a warm front. So let me switch the data time here so we can see the whole thing. All right. So it wants to keep the storms over us for the next couple of hours, and then by 10 to 11 o'clock, hopefully we can get this thing to shift north to give us a break from all the storms with the warnings, give us a break from the heavy waves of rainfall. That's the hope. And then the heavy rainfall will shift to the north for Friday, but then everything kind of comes back on Saturday. So let's take a longer term view of the radar here. So again, there's 7 o'clock in the evening. Everything gradually starting to shift to the north. By midnight into 2 o'clock in the morning, it's back over West Tennessee into Kentucky. This is where we set up a lot of potential flooding for the Ohio River by the weekend. And it's still, so Friday, hopefully, is much calmer across Middle Tennessee as the focus is up to the north. But as we head into Saturday, we're going to see it start, the main energy start to sink back down to the south a little bit. And during the day on Saturday, the main wave of energy will be coming through kind of its last gasp. And we'll start to see this swing out of here and be done with us as we head into Sunday. But off and on, the rest of the evening, gradually shifting north. Again, this is the tornado warning that we have right now. Let's see. Yeah, this cell was really ugly at one time, but it does look like it continues to weaken. Sorry, the Blessing the weather dog was just groomed and is making herself known there. So tornado warning, but this cell does not look nearly as organized as it did for Williamson and Rutherford in the southeastern corner of Davidson County. This is going to pass well to the south of downtown Nashville. Again, moving over Nolensville. There's still rotation with it over Nolensville, moving off toward the east, but just not nearly as organized as it was earlier. And that's what you want to see. I think it has crossed over onto the cool side of the boundary, so hopefully it'll continue to weaken. Still strong, still a lot of heavy rain, and still ugly looking as it's moving off to the north and east, just not nearly as organized. Now, if you'll notice on the cell to the south, so this is what we're going to have to watch, and this is what I'm talking about. If that boundary that's separating the rain cooler air and the warm, basically untapped air to the south, where again we're looking at upper 70s and low 80s, Murfreesboro, Shelbyville, Lewisburg, Mount Pleasant, and the cooler air, Nashville in the low 60s, the airport 64, Smyrna 66. And notice how the cell has crossed over into the cool side. But if we look back here, we're likely seeing these storms, at least the southern ends of these storms, still able, probably on the south, just on the south side of the boundary, and able to tap in to this warmth and moisture here. So we'll have to watch for this cell to strengthen, and we'll have to watch for this cell to potentially strengthen over Hohenwald. Right now, there are no severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings with those, but let's take a little inspection on the one on Hickman County, because if there was one in the next few minutes, so it's got some strong straight line winds with it, probably just below severe criteria. There are some warnings still back to the west towards Selmer. This is a severe thunderstorm warning there. And by the way, this entire area is still under a tornado watch through the rest of the evening. So I'm hoping they're going to let this tornado warning expire. Let's see what we're saying. Yeah, the storm is collapsing, according to the Weather Service. Yeah. They're saying it has crossed on the north side of the boundary, just like we've been talking about. So that's good. Yeah. The storm has crossed over to the cold side, is what they're saying, which is what we were surmising there. Because it was a pretty rapid collapse there in intensity. Once you start to see that hail core, because to get hail, you've got to have rising air. And when you get that rising air, if you get those raindrops up above where it's below freezing, and the updraft continues to kind of cycle, once you get a raindrop to freeze, it starts to fall, coated with more water, it gets caught back up in the updraft. But hail and lightning are both indicators of the health of an updraft. You have to have an updraft, a strong updraft, to get a severe thunderstorm. And you have to have it where it maintains its intensity to continue going. You've got the updraft feeding in the warm, moist air into it. The downdraft is where the rain and the hail is pulling the air from up above down toward the earth, and you get these gusty winds out ahead of these storms. But once the updraft is either cut off by the outflow or just loses its intensity, you typically see the storms, and they just cancel the tornado warning for it, so that's great. But that's when you see the storms weaken and collapse. In this case, it lost its ability to get that warm, moist air continue to feed into it because, again, there's almost a mini cold front across the area between, you can see Smyrna here, 66, Murfreesboro, 81, so it's right in through here. Once that updraft crossed over into the cold side, it couldn't maintain its intensity. Now, we go back to the west over Hickman County. This is going to be moving into Murray County and Williamson County, this cell. The north side of that cell is on the cool side of the boundary, but this part may still be on the warm side, so it's showing at least signs of strong straight line winds. Right now isn't showing signs of hail, or at least severe hail. Could be some pea-sized hail here along the Natchez Trace Parkway in the northern part of Lewis County. But this is just south of the Hickman-Lewis County line. And then you can see these other cells back to the west of there. These would be the ones coming in next, right in through here. So we still have to keep our guard up, is what I'm going to say. We don't have any tornado warnings right now. We have no severe thunderstorm warnings in our area. We continue with the flash flood warnings. I've had 2.96 inches of rain on the west side of Franklin. And we're going to see more waves of rain for the next few hours. There will be chances that we're going to see more in the way of warnings. Hopefully we won't see any more tornado warnings, and none of these cells that are out there, none of these waves, there's one, there's two, there's three that are coming. The third wave looks the strongest. How those storms interact with that boundary, that's going to be important. Where that boundary sets up, if it's able to push a little farther south. But later tonight, it all should begin moving back to the north, and all should carry most of the activity to the north and give us a break during the overnight tonight compared to what we had last night. So the biggest threat for the short term is kind of reshaping and focusing back into a flash flood threat, where we've had lots of reports of flooding, lots of Sumner County, parts of Wilson County, back into Williamson County. I was just not too long ago was on Old Natchez. The river is kind of lapping at the side of Old Natchez now, the Harpeth. So we're likely going to start to see road closures during the overnight for roads along the Harpeth River and in some of these other side areas. And we still could get another 1 to 2 inches of rain pretty easily across much of Middle Tennessee during the overnight tonight. So if you encounter flooding, just turn around. You know, the old saying from the Weather Service is turn around, don't drown. But so what I'll do is I'll continue to watch these cells. Again, the healthiest at the moment, although not severe, is the one that's approaching Santa Fe in Murray County. But I think probably that boundary is kind of laying right through here. So this may be just on the north side of the boundary too. So no tornado warnings, no severe thunderstorm warnings for Middle Tennessee at the moment. So we'll take a break, watch it. If I need to, I'll come back. But hey, I've got some folks watching on YouTube. You can go to charlieneaseweather.com and it'll take you to my YouTube channel where I do 2 to 3 times a week kind of a weather forecast across the U.S. And then also I stream on Facebook and YouTube together when I do severe weather coverage. And the severe weather coverage, the live stuff, for those of you who don't know, when I do live severe weather coverage, I'm just doing it mainly for Middle Tennessee, and I really focus on where most of my Facebook followers are. Most of them are based out of Nashville and out of Williamson County, Fairview, Franklin, down in there. And so that's what I'm not going to be one of these YouTube streamers that focuses on storms all across the country. I'm going to focus mainly right on my home area here. But you can see forecast updates if you go to charlieneaseweather.com. It'll take you to my YouTube page, and then on severe weather days, I'll also post on my Facebook page. But you'll also see more real estate stuff also, since that's my regular day job now. But thanks for visiting me. I appreciate it. I've had lots of nice notes, lots of nice messages over the last 24 hours during this event for people watching on Facebook and on YouTube, and I appreciate that so much. When I was 9 years old, and I graduated from Fairview High. I grew up between Leapers Fork and Fairview off of Pinewood Road at the end of Shoals Branch Road. When I was 9 years old, my dad took me in the middle of the night to see a flash flood, and it triggered a weather passion in me that helped me have a 25-year career as a TV meteorologist, and then I left that for family reasons to make sure that I could spend time with my family that I needed to. But I still love weather, still have a passion for it, and I appreciate the fact that you let me give you weather information. My highest interest in weather is severe weather. That's what I focused on at News Channel 5 for all those years, and before that at KFES 12 in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and before that at WCFT in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and before that at Channel 7 in Jackson, Tennessee. And so that's what I still like to focus on. That's what I study the most. And so I'm hoping that I add value when we have these nights where we have severe weather. My full intent is to add value and to help you understand the threats and what's coming your way when these kind of events and these crazy storm systems like the one that we've got right now affect your area here in Middle Tennessee. And then again, on YouTube, 2 to 3 times a week, you'll see more of a big picture forecast for the nation. I call it hotspot weather, where I'll focus in on the weather hotspots at that time. And right now, across the entire nation, the weather hotspot is right here in Middle Tennessee. So thanks again for visiting me, and appreciate all the followers, and I'll try to keep doing the same. And as I do more of it, I'll also try to include more information. I'll try to make the graphics look a little easier and better to use, and so that you can more easily see what I'm talking about. But good news is right now, no tornado warnings, no severe thunderstorm warnings, more waves of rain coming with locally heavy downpours, and watch out for flash flooding. And if things ramp back up in the severe weather department, I'll be streaming again. But thanks again for visiting me.